Fasting is not always fun or easy to do, so I'm going to give you 4 more advanced tips on how to get through it. And stick around to the end. I'm going to share the story of Vicky, who topped out at 365 pounds, and I'll share her fasting regimen that allowed her to shed 178 pounds. She doesn't like to say lost because she doesn't want to find those pounds again. In my previous video, I covered some basic tips for fasting. I'm going to cover 4 more advanced ones because fasting is not so easy to do. Here's tip number 1. Find a group. Everything in life is always easier when you do it in a group. This is true not just for fasting, but also for diets or quitting alcohol or quitting smoking. Humans are social animals and we need that support. So find the people that are going to support you. That is people you can talk to about how you're having difficulties, people who are going to give you tips, and there's lots of ways to do this. So you can go online. It's easier than ever to go onto various social media platforms and find people who are going to be supportive of intermittent fasting. There's always going to be a lot of dissenting opinion, so if you're not sure if people are going to support you, you might want to keep it quiet because some people will discourage you from fasting because they simply don't understand. Even though it's been used for thousands of years, not everybody is going to be supportive because there's a lot of conflicting opinion out there. Finding that supportive group is sometimes the difference in succeeding and failing. Tip number 2, give your body some time to adjust. Remember that when you're fasting, what you're trying to do is get your body to use some of the stores of energy that it's carrying. So, if you have a lot of body fat, and you haven't fasted much, your body really doesn't know how to metabolize that fat. It's mostly used to using the food that you're eating. So it can take up to a few weeks to even a few months to get used to the process of not eating so frequently. Your body can use really 2 different types of fuel. Just like a hybrid car, you can use electricity or you can use gas. Your body is much the same. So it can use glucose and it can use fat. If you're eating a typical diet, which is relatively high in carbohydrates, and you're eating all the time, which is sort of the standard way that people eat today, then you're mostly using carbohydrates. However, when you're fasting, once you've gone through those carbohydrates, you need to use body fat, which in scientific terms is called triglycerides. As you get used to using the triglycerides, then your body becomes more efficient at using it and it feels more natural. So while you're switching over, getting your body used to using fat as a fuel, you might notice that you have less energy, for example. So it does take some time to adjust. An easy way to transition is to first go to a low carbohydrate diet or a very low one, such as a ketogenic diet. You're eating a lot of dietary fat, and the way that the body metabolizes dietary fat versus body fat is the exact same. So it's an easy transition to go from a low carbohydrate diet and intermittent fasting compared to a relatively high carbohydrate one. Tip number 3, fasting is not an excuse to eat whatever you want. If you're trying to lose weight, then it really comes down to 2 things. What you eat and how often you eat, or the question of when to eat. And these 2 questions are separate. So fasting doesn't tell you anything about what you eat when you do eat. And what you eat when you do eat doesn't tell you anything about how often you're eating. There's 2 completely separate notions, and they're both important. So even if you're fasting, you're going to get more mileage out of that if you also follow a proper diet. So if you are going to fast and then you eat pizza and chips and beer, well, you might just cancel out the weight loss benefits. So make sure that you're attacking both of those questions, what you're eating and when you're eating. And if you do both of them, then you're going to do a lot better. Tip number 4, act as if nothing is happening. Remember that when you're fasting, there's no real difference in what it is that you can and can't do. You're simply changing where your body gets energy. When you eat, you're going to use the energy from that food and you're going to store some of that as body fat and as sugar. When you don't eat or when you're fasting, you're simply going to take the energy that you've stored away and use it. If you have weight to lose, if you have excess body fat that you'd like to get rid of, then there's plenty of food. Think of it as a refrigerator and a freezer. So, if you have a lot of food in your freezer, you don't have to go to the store every day, and you don't have to change what you're doing because you can always get some steaks out of the freezer, you can get some vegetables out of the freezer and eat that. Your body is the same. If you're not eating, you're simply going to dip into those stores of food energy just like you go into the freezer. That's simply food that you've stored away. So there's no difference. You don't need to change what you're doing. Some people think, oh, can I exercise? Of course. If you can exercise when you're eating, you can exercise when you're fasting. Your body is going to figure out where it's going to get its energy from. Is it the food or is it your body fat? If you're exercising in a fasted state, you're going to take that energy from your body fat. And that's great. And the same goes for any of your other daily activities. So whether you have a big meeting or whether you have to be awake for school or anything else that you're doing, whether it's physical, whether it's mental, like you have to concentrate, you're going to be able to do the same. When you start eating again, the same thing goes. Don't focus on eating a huge meal after you fasted. So for example, if you have done a 24-hour fast, you ate dinner, you did 24 hours of fasting, you ate dinner the next day, you don't have to force yourself to eat more. Eat as normally as possible. Think about your body eating the calories that it needs from your body fat during breakfast and lunch. Instead of eating food, you're eating your body fat. So therefore, during dinner, you don't need to eat more because that's where you've taken those calories out, and that's the only way you're going to lose that fat. So act as if nothing has changed. So let me tell you about Vicky. She had topped out at 365 pounds, and luckily she found a video testimonial on YouTube and thought about doing some fasting. She found some videos that I had made and started off with a 16-8 protocol and then moved to 24 and 1 meal a day. And that seemed to work for her. The biggest issue, however, has been emotional eating, and that's where she's really kept to fasting as a way of keeping herself in control. She says, don't bite off more than you can chew. What she means by this is to start with something that you can handle and then gradually move up. So she started with shorter fasts, then moved her way up into the 20-hour fast and the 1 meal a day, things that she knew she could handle. She also kept in mind the reason why she was doing this. She wanted to lose that weight to really get healthy. She says, make sure that you enjoy the journey. There will be some ups and downs. There's going to be some awesome days and some horrible days. But the key is consistency and sticking to it. And the only way to do that is to love the journey every day. That's great advice, Vicky, and congratulations. I think you're doing an amazing job. So I hope those tips have helped you. Give them a try. And hey, if they do help you, then make sure you share it with some of your friends because they may find it helpful as well. And if you learned something in this video, if you could do me a favor and hit that like button, the one that's down there. I'll see you next week.